I'm ready. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Luann Barron. I'm the superintendent of the Kansas School for the Deaf. I'll go ahead and introduce Carlos. First, I want to thank you all for joining us today. This is a critical issue for us to discuss related to mental health guidance for our students. And so, of course, this is a time in which our students really are needing a lot of support and much needed support, especially during this time. So today our moderator will be Carlos Aponte Salcedo, Jr. And as you can see him here up on screen. Hi, everybody. He's a proud Puerto Rican from New York with African heritage. He's also a school administrator at the Lexington School for the Deaf in New York City. He oversees the school mental health counseling and behavioral specialists. He also is the administrative director of the residential program, providing supports to multicultural students and administrator for the counselors for the multicultural club. He also helps oversee yearbook and other clubs. He is nationally certified counselor, and his greatest passion is believing in equal access for deaf, deafblind, deaf disabled, hard of hearing, and late deafened individuals. His goal is related to reducing oppression of identities. He's part of the Council de Manos as a director for the past 4 years. And he has recognized the importance and impact of empowering Latinx youth, adults, and he is currently on the Lead K New York core team. He acts as a core team member there. He is committed to the effort and promotion of linguistic access for deaf children in early education and within the Latinx community. So now I'll turn it over to Carlos. Hi, thank you for that introduction, Luann. So nice to meet you all. I want to let you know, you may see my dog walking around in the background. I do have my door closed, but my dog is bright and knows how to get on in. I would like to start by first explaining about the Lexington School for the Deaf and what my team has been doing specifically for distance learning. We started with the school closure. Our last day was Friday, March 13th. Our staff came in that following Monday and Tuesday on the 16th and 17th. And distance learning with the students began the following week, that third week of March. We have our midwinter break. Typically in New York, there's a week-long midwinter break, and then we came together. At that time, we had already had the opportunity to discuss about potential closure and what we would do in providing supports to students if that did occur, for both students and families. So across New York State, IEP requirements are there. They did recognize there may need to be some flexibility with IEPs. However, in looking at counseling services, those typically occur once a week. When looking at speech, PT, OT, those oftentimes are happening 3 to 4 weeks. So the state offered some guidance in being flexible in that due to distance learning. Those regulations can be more difficult to satisfy given our current scenario. For middle school and high school students who are already on IEPs, we've continued to provide counseling services. We started with Google Hangouts. And of course, there were some technology snafus, so we moved on to Zoom. And we've actually continued to go back and forth between the two platforms. And so the way in which we've sorted out the schedule is that the school actually sent out, I'm not sure what that program was, but it was a system, Schoology. And so with that program, we did course readiness, discussion of assignments, all of that with teachers, but also they had items available to teachers and students to be able to communicate with one another. And so through that, you can send video messages. And by using that forum, staff, the counselors, behavior staff were also to coordinate meeting you tomorrow, next week, what have you. And so that's really how we've done our schedule coordination, was via that Schoology. Now for preschool and elementary, vastly different age group, that requires more adult involvement. So actually, let me back up a little bit. Prior to distance learning, we were already using Schoology with middle school and high school. That was a familiar platform. And so we'd email students and say, hey, you missed your session today, or what have you. And so that wasn't anything new for our middle school and high school students. However, with preschool and elementary, if the students didn't come, traditionally we communicated that with the teachers directly or with the teacher's assistants, hey, please send the child to their session. However, with distance learning, it made it a little bit more complicated. And so we've become a little bit more flexible with those mandates. It requires contact with the families, finding out when they're available to set up a time with their child. We've talked about having the families be a part of the sessions with their child, or our counselors may even join class meetings to do what we call push-in services. In discussions with family, that's gone all right. They may even start the session with their child and then leave the room. For one-on-one sessions, that's been a little bit different. In the school buildings, we have privacy. We can guarantee that because the door is closed. Counselors and students are there in the room. However, with distance learning, that's far more complex. For example, in distance learning, we have someone who has 9 siblings that are in and out, that interrupt sessions frequently. However, one advantage is that no one in that family signs. So we're able to communicate through sign language. However, having that one-on-one experience is compromised. So as I mentioned, the high school, middle school, and then elementary preschool have IEPs already that have been documented. However, for those remaining students who are not on an IEP, those aren't students that we are neglecting. We are wanting to ensure that if they are in need of counseling services or looking for support, they can contact us through the inbox in Schoology. With the younger children, either the families themselves reach out to us requesting support, or their teachers can make a recommendation. Any staff can make that recommendation, whether it be speech language, PT, OT, or others. The feel that that student is needing support, they can reach out to me. And then we will do an assessment of the need and assign a counselor to work with that child. Now, any student that receives services, typically what we do is we reach out to the family via phone. And we're having to do that for every child. Let them know I'm going to be providing counseling services. This is what it looks like. And then the family has to give their permission. It doesn't have to be a signed consent. A verbal consent or email is sufficient. So that really encapsulates the one-on-one sessions. For group session, what that looks like for us, with high school, we've set up what's called Couch Talk. And that is more of informal grouping. It's an open group, meaning that anyone can join and participate. That is scheduled for Wednesdays, usually after school hours. And we intentionally scheduled it for that time frame, because throughout the day, we want our students to be focused on academics. Teachers can be available for office hours, as students can be a part of class meetings and virtual field trips. Whereas after school, is the least interruptions for them. So during Couch Talk, that's run by 2 counselors. And again, high school students can go in at their leisure. There's no requirement for them to participate. Right now, we have 2 groups that are running on a weekly basis. One is FLTC, which is the Foreign Language Transition class. And we have 3 classes this year within that group because we've seen growth there. With FLTC, that is for students who are over age 14 who've moved here from another country. Either their country has some schooling and they have some education under their belt, or they have no formal schooling. So they come to Lexington to pick up English and ASL, and they're a part of the FLTC group. It includes child development, and after some time, they're able to transfer into high school groups. So within that class in New York, coming to Lexington, coming here, it's a new situation altogether, plus the pandemic, they're now staying home. So we're having to structure that differently. We have all 3 classes meeting on a weekly basis. It's run by 2 counselors. And the reason why we have 2 is because the students' communication can develop an understanding of those different skills. So counselors help with meeting their needs and their communication requirements. And the goal of that group is to have the opportunity to discuss moving here to the US, settling in New York, and now with coronavirus, and being able to express their feelings, identifying those together, what those feelings mean, and incorporating strategies. The second group is another high school group. And this is a department for our students to have academic and behavioral increased needs. So with that group, we provide a social skills group. One example is Drawful. I personally haven't really used it, but it seems that the students play that game quite a bit. And then in participating in that, the counselors can help facilitate guessing what their drawing is. And so through that platform, it allows students to learn how to turn take, understand communication, building a rapport. Some other groups that we've set up, for example, lunch chat. Counselors participate in that and do like show and tell. And so that's more so for the elementary and middle school ages. Now for mindfulness. Resources and services, really, sorry, let me back up. Resources and activities, I should say. On a weekly basis, I have one of my staff who are creating vlogs of different mindfulness activities that can be sent out to the age groups, whether it be high school, special needs students, or meaning students with additional disabilities, as well as videos for staff. So basically every week we're sending out self-care tips as they apply to different groups. And so that's being done weekly. And for staff, it's a private group that it's posted to. It's also posted to ADP, which is where we're able to see our paycheck and benefits. And so it's all posted there for staff to have access to that portal and view those. We also have SS, or social services. Interpreters, you doing all right? Okay, great. So we sign like this, SS, social services. So for example, really there's a whole list of things, but there's 3 I want to highlight. One is death in the family. There are some students who've had family members that have passed away from coronavirus, and there's a lot of questions regarding that. And so discussing appropriate information sharing, is the family agreeing to share that information? And then for the student, how do they show them support? And so we've been working with them. We do assign counselors to go and meet with the student to have discussions about what has happened, what we do know, what is unknown, and then providing support to them. Also, that student who has lost a family member is assigned an interim counselor for ongoing support. I oftentimes joke with the school community and colleagues that my resume is going to change. I'm going to have to change something else in my job description, and that's technical support. I can't even tell you how often I've had to chime in and help with how to operate Zoom, how to do different technical aspects. Just 3 weeks ago, my staff was asking me to help with an 8th grader looking at Zoom, and then Google has their different uh, icons. I can't even think of what the word is off the top of my head. Yes, icon, that's the word I was looking for, to be able to enlarge things. And so at that time, the New York Department of Education had placed a ban on Zoom. And so the student was really struggling. After about 45 minutes of talking through it and then texting with our own tech support team, kind of acting as a mediator between the two, we finally made it, got into Zoom. And so that's just one example of something we've been doing. So many of our students don't have devices. And when you consider our population, roughly 93 to 94% of our student population are students of color. And our families have a total of 20 some odd languages amongst them, cultural variances, and our families at home have several siblings perhaps. And the entire family is trying to use Wi-Fi. It can be very difficult to ensure everyone's connected. So there's been a lot of contact with the families that maybe don't have access. We've been trying to ensure that they do, whether it be through a laptop or iPad. So another social service that we've been providing is online family support group. We're doing that 2 times a week, and that's happening on Mondays and Thursdays. The group is provided in 3 different languages: ASL, English, and Spanish. And these groups are an open-ended group. They're informal. Families can come and go as they please. They can come in and get whatever's off their chest. They can come in and talk about their needs or whatever it is they may be needing support with. And so our family liaisons able to coordinate with the family to get whatever information is needed to hand that off to administrators or teachers to help brainstorm on how to best support them. One example is we have a family that said, hey, now that I'm staying home, I am wanting to learn sign language. And so just, I want to say last week, we were able to coordinate in offering online sign language classes at no cost for the first time. And so it's online, 2 hours, twice a week. And so now my department, PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, that's a Tier 2 intervention. Tier 1 really applies to all students, that's school-wide, whereas Tier 2, that's an additional level of support for our students. We had one boy, 6th grader. It just so happened 2 times that week, slept in till 11:30. The home life structure was a little bit complicated, so the counselor started to do check-ins every single morning at 11 o'clock, sit in, ensure they were ready for the day, figuring out what they were needing, getting their devices ready, all of their work together, and then they were able to transition to class. So we are providing check-ins with a handful of students who are needing that kind of support to get started for their day. Another intervention for Tier 2 level is staff contact whenever they're needing something. So 2 examples that come to mind. Yesterday, we had our first intervention meeting with, let me think, I believe 4 teachers, including plus myself and a high school supervisor. So we got together to discuss concerns about one freshman level class. There was a student who wasn't attending class. They weren't participating in the Zoom meetings, and we were discussing what to do in addressing that. We were able to brainstorm ideas of how to best support the teacher as well as support the student. Secondly, as I mentioned, we had started a form which is called Request for Assistance. And that particular form has been sent out school-wide. And if someone is needing support regarding academics or attendance, they're able to submit that form to myself and the department supervisor. We're able to take a glance at that. That form is very specific. It tells us what the teachers have already attempted and how in which they've been in contact with the families and students. And we don't want to duplicate or triplicate our services. And so myself and the supervisor are able to get together and discuss what our next steps are. And so that's also part of our state reporting, talking about abuse, neglect. And with coronavirus, the stay-at-home orders, talking about reporting educational neglect. And so we contacted the state. They said no, that we weren't able to report that. If there was no concern prior to distance learning, then we weren't able to report it. However, if there was a demonstrated pattern that has become exacerbated with distance learning, then we do report that. So it's an opportunity for us to discuss how to get the students to come to school virtually. Now for behavior support. We have 3 behavioral specialists, and they are available to address oppositional behavior, bullying, conflict, discrimination, harassment, and the like. However, with distance learning, there's been question as to whether or not we'll see an escalation of those behaviors. So far, it doesn't appear that we have. Some students do have inappropriate use of their school devices or the chat room. And if that is the case, then we are contacted and we meet with students to review what our behavioral expectations are. So staff support, I know that's already been mentioned. My team has also started developing goals for reentry and a recovery plan as we go back to school, what that's going to look like. And we've placed a lot of emphasis on when we go back to school, starting assessment and instruction actually is going to have to be a little bit of postponed because we need to start with intention and trauma-informed care, making sure that we're really taking a pulse on how our students are doing and understanding what that's going to look like. Administration is going to be doing the same thing. We want to have aligned plans to ensure that we have a well-timed reentry. So among the 8 of us, we've been meeting, having regular discussions about, for example, last week, what worked well, what were our challenges. So that really is what Lexington has been doing, the mental health department in a nutshell over these last, I think this is what, week 9 now, wow. Okay, so I'll start with questions or go ahead and open the floor. I'm pretty flexible.
Okay, do we have any questions? Anyone? No questions? Nothing? I don't see anything in the chat box. Any questions? Okay, all right. I'm really impressed with what your team has done. I mean, really outstanding. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you for recognizing. I appreciate that.
No, yeah. Hello, can everyone see me okay?
Oh, it looks like I see a question from the chat box. Let's see, it looks like Jana Buell is asking what kind of curriculum we use. For high school, with that group, we're really working on academics and cognitive or language delays. So social skills that we've been focusing on include turn taking, responding to what others have said, how to use technology, and those basic skills for them to develop friendship skills with the peers in their department.
McClary, the question is, how many students do we have? Altogether, we're at 280. 280, and that runs from preschool, that's our 3-year-olds, all the way up till age 21. So yep, 280 is the head count. And then the curriculum that's used. Well, We've got 2. Second step, that's related to child safety there, and sexual abuse or child abuse. And then the second one, the one that my team developed 5 years ago, and that's just utilizing different theories and different curriculum. We've kind of made our own from that, but that's looking at behavior expectations, you know, being safe, being open-minded, being accountable and respectful. Bearing in mind those 2, well, really the second steps, we're holding on to that for now. That's kind of been put on the back burner. But SOAR, that's what we call it. That's something our school kind of birthed ourselves. And we use that within our counseling sessions. And well, no, not really groups, but teachers already have a strong emphasis. They kind of thread that through in what they do. And they remind those students of those expectations, that whatever occurs in school, the same expectation as relates to SOAR applies to home. Brittany, her question is, counselor-student ratios. Well, that's a good question. Hold on 1 second. I'll use my calculator. Bear with me. One to 35. Yep. 1 staff member per 35 students. Can you discuss your vlog sessions? Can you discuss, Naomi, can I discuss my vlog sessions? Do you mind elaborating on what you're asking for, actually? Yeah, you can type it out in the chat. That's fine. Okay, so Carrie's now asking, what did she ask here? Yeah. Okay. What strategies will you implement to manage trauma when re-entering? So when we go back into the buildings. Yes, that is part of our planning. We've got it documented. You know, one thing that comes to mind right now, yes, I can talk about this. We hope that we're going to have professional development for our staff members. We're hoping that that occurs first and foremost. I'm talking about teachers, teachers' assistants, 2 staff per classroom, PD with them, professional development, where we can discuss, you know, what that's going to look like when we re-enter. What things we might want to expect, you know, will come up. Things that we can anticipate and what staff can do. I mean, the goal is always for teachers to run the classrooms, for assistants to help there, but what's our, you know, our support kind of comes at the very end, ideally. But another thing we want to talk about as we come back, of course, having smaller groups for each class, but having this dialogue. So we have this school closure, and here we are re-entering. What does that process look like? And then also having a conversation around teachers, probably most likely making more referrals to our PBIS team. That's most likely going to happen. And then how do we screen? Do we provide one-on-one services to all students, or maybe it's small group, depending on the need? So trying to evaluate that accordingly. What else did we discuss? This is what's coming to mind right offhand. Okay, Mimi, how many counselors, behavioral specialists, and other support staff do you have? All right. So we have 4 mental health counselors. We have 3 behavior specialists. We have myself. So that brings us to 8 so far. And then we have social worker. Social worker works partly with the families, but then also we have a family liaison. So the 3 of them do a lot of collaborating. Also, we have got outreach, tech support, which I've already kind of alluded to. Yeah, that's the support side of things. But that does not include our school psychologists, and it doesn't include health services. So I didn't even bring those into those numbers. Okay, sure. Diana from Fanwood wants to know more about our couch talk. Okay, so there's been 3 sessions. The first one, it was about COVID-19. about coronavirus itself. What is it? What do we know about it? What do we not know about it? The second one is not coming to mind right now. The third is summer. What that's going to look like. Summer jobs, are there any? Summer, camps, etc. What are the alternatives when all of those are not available? Our school has not decided whether or not we're having summer school. We're still waiting for the governor to make an announcement regarding that. So that's pending as we speak. Oh, Brittany here, she's asking, mental health means school counselor. Yes. So my team, yes, they're school counselors. And all of our training comes from either a counselor program or a social work program. But we're a school support team, school counselors. Okay, so Russell, yes. About the recovery plan, please, yes.
I'm Russell West. I'm the superintendent of the Lexington School for the Deaf. So I do want to explain a little bit about reentry / recovery plan. We as an administrative team have been having discussions about our focus on the first week of transitioning back into the school buildings. And during that time, we'll focus on the mental health of everyone, including employees. We're also having discussions about giving staff the opportunity to have their own discussions about what they've been going through, because we've been completely removed from the school building for 9 weeks now. And we want to ensure that our staff is feeling comfortable being back in that environment. We want to have a reset and look at what's going well and what isn't. So having that dialogue. And we know that that's going to take 2 to 4 days. And we're also going to focus on curriculum planning, PBIS planning, what it is that we need to be doing for school to get started. We feel that it's not right to bring everybody back and just get our feet wet right away. We feel that a big part of this is a focus on mental health, and that's what we want to prioritize before getting back to school.
Okay, one thing I just wanted to add here. I know this topic, we're really geared on students, but our school, we're so fortunate that we've got support for our staff too. And we have drafted referrals and resources, and we've gotten that out to our staff members. Also from HR side of things, our director reached out to our health insurance to arrange for teletherapy services. Our insurance that's already been arranged at no cost to our staff. You know what a challenge is though for deaf individuals? Yes, they don't have counselors that can sign, so they don't have that one-to-one opportunity, which is a whole issue in itself. But administration has given every staff member a personal self-care day. And that is not that won't touch our sick time, our vacation time. It's just a gift that we've received so that we can, where was I going with that? Okay, so from May 1st to June 9th, we can use that day that was given to us at any time. Barbara, okay, so she sent this out in the group chat. Okay, will we have another topic? Yeah, focusing on staff. Let's do that. That's an important one. Agreed. Okay, Allison is asking if my school has an LGBTIA groups during remote learning, and is that separate? The Learning Center for the Deaf, what's happening? I would love more ideas for isolation for LGBTQIA students. You know, honestly, we haven't addressed that. I do know that we have a club, GSA club, gender and sexuality club that meets, I want to say monthly. Yes. So the GSA club meets monthly. I don't know what happened the previous month, but I do know that the club is still having their monthly meetings. And then we have our multicultural club, and they meet on a weekly basis. And that's intended for our high school age students. So we have counselors that are invited there. We do different presenters, and that's about a half an hour where we're talking about culturally related things. So we're talking about Bangladesh, Korea. There's a woman from Korea. We've had a Korean woman. trying to think of some other individuals. Adopted Korean, U.S. citizen. Then this week, what are we doing this week? There's been a variety of presenters. And just to let you know, they're not staff individuals from our school, they're community members. And we've invited them into our Zoom sessions. Oh, that's a good question. Mimi, she's asking if we have any experience with providing support to students that are homeless and do not have internet access. And if not, do we have any ideas? Yes, we have. We actually had one student, high school age student, freshman, and prior to this pandemic, living in a shelter. And I have to say, my interpretation of that, homeless shelters, if someone, we don't have anybody that's not even living in a shelter, but this student that we had residing in a shelter and living with their sibling, their sister that's 2 to 3 years older. Really devastating story about this family. But anyhow, when we experienced the school closure that Friday, that student wasn't even there, so didn't have that laptop, has a mobile device. But for the first couple weeks, I mean, it was dire for that student. We worked through it. We were able to put in a special request and got this student a free device from the Department of Education. So that was provided. Next problem, how are we going to get this student Wi-Fi? So the shelter Wi-Fi, it's public, it's shared, it's spotty. It's not great coverage, but that's been the biggest challenge here. Internet service, that's really been difficult for us to kind of grapple and control, right? There are several families that don't have Wi-Fi. Fortunately enough, I do know in New York City, and I've seen this in other cities and states as well, they are providing free Wi-Fi when necessary, which is awesome, right? The next problem is when you have a family that had Wi-Fi before, but then didn't pay the bill, so they suspended their services, they're not willing to give them free services. But we stepped in and we're like, okay, you can't penalize these families. So that's how we've kind of worked around that.
Carlos, do you want to respond to Naomi's question related to the vlog and what topics those have been?
Okay, so I wasn't clear. What do you mean by vlog session? I guess I didn't have clarity there. Naomi, what do you mean by vlog? Can you just maybe unpack that a little bit? Yeah, sure.
She did ask later on about what topics were being sent out. Carlos, Luann, people don't have to type in the chat. They can also start their video if they prefer to ask a question in that way. No one's forced to use the chat. They can also show up and use sign language too.
Yes, please.
That's not a problem. So I know every meeting dynamics are a little bit different, but everyone has a right to start their video and ask a question face to face.
Naomi, can you please show me your face? I'd love to see that. Okay, so let's see. I'll go ahead with the first one with the group. What challenges do your schools and programs have related to offering mental health support for our students? What are your challenges out there? Challenges, concerns? You can either type in the chat box or you can just share your video.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Jack Johnson, and Naomi is actually one of my staff. I actually think that she left the meeting. I think she was saying she just wanted clarification on what topics that you mentioned that you had been sending out via vlog. What topics that was, what kind of discussions you've been having.
Okay, so for mindfulness, we went over tips and strategies. We're doing that on a weekly basis. That's specific to mindfulness. That's one particular area, but another one would be grounding, how to ground yourself. And we've talked about what that looks like, what that feels like. We did that in a vlog. Quite honestly, these vlogs, they're all self-care tips at the end of the day. We've also done vlogs on what we should not do. We pulled this in from Daily Moth, the information regarding, well, again, we're talking specifically about coronavirus, COVID-19, not any other topics. So we're pulling in information and sharing that. And then Schoology is for our students to view. Oh, New York City. We have, every day we send out from, I don't know, the mayor's office. We're sending out daily bulletins that come from the mayor's office, the state, New York on pause, which basically indicates that we're all staying at home, right? That businesses are closed for the time being. Parking, as you can imagine, in New York City, if you park, you get cited for that. So a lot of messages are going out via text. We also have an Instagram page available now. So we've got our text messages, but we've also got the Instagram videos that are run by New York City deaf volunteers that are signing those text messages that are going out. And we also post that on Schoology. Just kind of running through, yeah, I believe that's what I can recall right now. Any other concerns that your schools and programs are facing?
Hi, I'm Mimi. I'm a social worker, and our school has seen an increase in the number of students with lack of communication at home. Obviously, some of them are residential students, and so they're at the school during the week with access, and they're at home with families who cannot sign or cannot communicate. So we're seeing an increase in family complaints about their child not following the rules, not following expectations. And a lot of that has to do with language and communication breakdown. And so the students are trying to make assumptions on what their parents are wanting from them. So we're seeing an increase in conflict, fighting. I'm wondering if you have any tips or things we can do, because oftentimes our counselors are trying to work with our parents to help explain kind of what it is they need, but it seems that parents are resistant or in denial about what their child's needing. And it seems to be more of a deaf hearing thing rather than a parent-child thing. So I'm just curious what your experience is, what type of supports, whether that be group support or how to get through to parents on that.
That's a great question. We provide family support groups, and that's twice a week to our families. So those concerns, when they're brought up, teachers will tell us, hey, you know, this particular situation happened with this child. So then we have this opportunity with the family. We say, so teacher told me that there's an issue. And so we ask them to come to the group as a result. It's happened probably a couple parents, and it's gotten kind of contentious. And we've reminded them, you know, we have that stay put order right now. We're all at home, and your child's missing out on a lot of incidental learning and information. So when they're in school, they don't miss out on that. Do our families get it? Not exactly.
Right.
Well, a lot of them are just, they're naive. They just don't know. And you know, they don't get what it entails when you have a deaf child. So now with this pandemic, understanding that we always offer ASL classes. Yes. The numbers of families that actually register, 10, 15, maybe 20. We've got 90 families right now. I mean, we could not provide it to all of them. We had to kind of hand select a little bit to, you know, provide that resource, which is a good problem to have, right? There was that, and then family support groups. But, you know, bearing in mind too, that I think our families, you know, capitalizing on these Zoom messages, right? Talking about what it's like to have a deaf child. So that might be a presentation that we want to offer to our families now that we've gone Zoom. So I'm thinking that might be an idea with our families.
Thank you. That's helpful. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, and good luck. Luann?
I know parents have been making a lot of contact. By the way, I'm Luann from Kansas. We've been getting a lot of contact whether it be to parents or to teachers or student life counselors, social workers. They're actually concerned about getting too much contact, that they're getting frequent and repeat information. We're getting redundancies there. I don't know how you've been handling that. It seems like you've got a lot of wonderful programming and resources, a lot of groups, but I'm just wondering how you manage the number of, or really I should say volume of contacts that you've been receiving.
Good question. This is why we've had the request for assistance form so that we can see and track who's been reaching out to families. We don't want to do it, twice or 3 times. We don't want to be reaching out to these families too many times. We've done it in the past where we've made these calls and same issue. To assure that the families are receiving information in a consistent fashion, we have a phone system called One Call Now. So One Call Now is where we reach out to our families. We have family support Mondays, Thursdays, and now with coronavirus, please look at the website. This is one way in which our schools getting information out there to our families. If a child misses a class or if there's a need with a particular child, the first contact is either the teacher or the classroom assistant. They make that call. If they don't have any luck, then from there, what happens is the academic supervisor, between us, the counselors, or them, they'll make the call. So if they're in counseling sessions, it makes sense for our staff to chime in. If the child doesn't have that service, then the supervisor reaches out to that child's family. Now, suppose we're talking about occupational therapy, physical therapy, or speech. The child doesn't show up to that session. The teacher then tries to kind of mitigate that and arrange for that to happen. And if that doesn't work, then we do bring it to the supervisor. But your question as to who has the most contact, One Call Now, or classroom teacher assistants or teachers, between the two of them, they make that decision.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay,
Hi again. Could you talk a little bit about the school supports and whatnot, but how are you supporting students in the residential programming?
So our school is not like other schools for the deaf where you've got big programs, you got 50, 100 to 200 students. We're smaller, we've got 10 kids, that's it. So those 10 kids are in that program for a very specific reason. Academic intervention may be necessary. Our program is still up and running, and our dorm staff right now, currently, what they're involved in is tutoring. So that's one thing that our dorm staff are engaged in. They've got access to Schoology. The dorm staff can see within Schoology what assignments have been completed, when the due dates are for particular assignments, and then the dorm staff will then sit down with the student and engage them.
I mean more of like counseling support and that kind of thing, behavior support, what have you.
PBIS takes care of that. School counselors take care of that, not staff.
I'm just wondering how many staff do you have, or I guess what's your ratio then, supporting the cottages?
Well, dorm students, like I said, 10, I believe 9 are already in counseling. So they already have counselors.
Got it.
90% of them. Yeah, sure.
All right. I actually have one question. Oh, go right ahead, Wendy.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, do you do home visits where you actually show up, maybe, distant wise, but you show up outside of their home? Because I know we have one family that's very resistant. They refuse Zoom. They outright refuse any of these technologies that we're providing. And the mom's done her best, but this child has outbursts and the mom just leaves the child alone. So this child is not receiving any educational access because of the family dynamics. And they're needing a lot more support. So just out of curiosity, if you have any ideas in terms of how to work around that.
My school has not conducted any home visits at this time, but it's more of a not yet. I mean, showing up at someone's home, I have seen other schools for deaf, they're doing that, not necessarily counselors, but in which teachers are going to the home, providing materials and resources. I have seen our schools doing that. And if possible, I do encourage that, but I know that face-to-face contact may be helpful in this situation. We all recognize that this situation is not easy. It's very difficult on our students. It's difficult on the adults in their life, whether it be family or staff. And especially with younger students that maybe don't have the language or the know-how to express themselves, it's even far complicated by that. And so oftentimes where we could see them at the school, we're not having that same opportunity. It's very, very tough.
Thank you. I can respond to Wendy, actually. What we've done is we've had some face-to-face opportunities where we've visited the child and family, and it's been the principal that was responsible for that interaction. So they call the family that has that issue with their child, whether or not they're just being insubordinate, they refuse to do the work, and they don't have that linguistic capacity to have that conversation. So the principal shows up. They're legitimately standing in their driveway and kind of facilitating communication between the child and the family to pinpoint what the real issue is. From there, they're kind of like that, middle person for communication intent. But they explain you need to do X, Y, and Z because the parent is trying their best. Maybe the child's sleeping in, but they outline the expectations coming in from the school and just saying that, the same is expected from you. That transition's really hard. The child's having an issue making that connection. They think home is intended for play. School is where we learn and we do those assignments. So those children really are not seeing that connection. There's more clarification happening, but yeah, those are for those local students where the principals can do those visits. If they reside, further away, then they're having to do that via Zoom, and that can be challenging.
Something that comes to mind just throughout this conversation, I know last week we had a teacher reach out to me and they themselves were crying. They had explained that a student was not wanting to come to Zoom. This is a second grader. They come from a deaf family. They were not wanting to show up to class. So the teacher, the mom was incredibly upset, at her wit's end, very frustrated. And the parents have their own anxieties. And they were concerned that the child's refusal was a reflection on their parenting skills. And the teacher took the time to reassure them that, it's okay. And to ask the child, hey, do you want to come eat breakfast with me? And they said no. So they hung up. And then the mom texted and said, oh, they are interested in eating breakfast with you. So they connected virtually. And the teacher purposely was in the kitchen and said, hey, I'm eating breakfast. I'm getting ready for my day. And so the students started eating their breakfast. They kept it light, had a casual interaction. And after eating together, the teacher was able to ask, hey, what was going on this morning? They said, it's not fair. I'm just making up a sign name. They didn't go to class, but I've been going to class Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I've been learning my math, and the other students aren't going. And sure enough, they had a couple of classmates that weren't really participating. And teacher said, you're right. You've been coming to class. I'm so proud of your attendance. But you know what? I just love seeing your face. It means so much to me to see you. And so after they hung up, the teacher contacted me and said, I felt like maybe it wasn't enough. And I said, you know what you did was perfect. You validated that child's feelings. You told them that you're happy to see them. And sure enough, 2 days later, come Wednesday, that child showed up. There were no issues. Children will have their moments of feeling disgruntled, of missing their classmates, of being bored with the routine of Zoom. And it's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to feel tired. One of my family support groups, one of the mothers, she has 2 sons. I know her youngest, I believe, is in pre-K. The oldest is in 8th grade. And the pre-kindergarten son, he's been attending classes. He's been using Marco Polo to communicate with classmates and things like that. And so there was one week in which he went 4 or 5 times, come 6th time, he said, I'm done. And mom was really trying to placate him, convince him to get in. whereas the other has really been attending. And it just so happens that sometimes have an off week or an off day, and mom really wanted to know why. So she called me in and we talked about it. He said, you know, I miss my friends. I said, yeah, you know, I understand. He said, I want to touch my friends. I want to be able to hug my friends. And children are struggling. Sometimes those things pop up, whether it be through attendance or what have you. They want to know where their friends are. You know, we talk about 8-1-1 as our ratio, 8 students to 1 teacher to 1 teacher assistant. There can be problems. There can be things that come up, and our students feel confused. They feel uncertain. Oh, Russell wanted me to mention, he's right. The reason why we have not yet begun the home visit is because this is a hot spot here in New York City. We are pretty much the epicenter of all that has been happening. And so with our stay-at-home orders, out of safety concerns, we haven't been doing home visits. Thank you for chiming in, Russell. I did want to share one challenge that my school has struggled with, and that has to do with mental health evaluations. Now, if a child is making suicidal comments, or perhaps they've engaged in self-harm behaviors, or have access to a weapon, we immediately would send them to the hospital, and then, sorry, New York, we sign hospital like this. We would traditionally send them directly to a hospital. The family would meet them there. Of course, the families are upset. They would much rather come to the school rather than the hospital, but we instruct them to go to the hospital due to liability. We don't want the school to take on that liability. They go to the hospital, they undergo a psychiatric evaluation. However, now with distance learning, evaluations are having to happen remotely, whether it be through Zoom or Google Hangouts. And we actually have had 2 incidents in which both children actually did take action. And we informed the family that they needed to go to the hospital. And the family immediately was against that idea. They were concerned about safety. And that was a real difficulty for us, how to convince the parents that they need to call 911. They were concerned, we were concerned about causing discord with our relationship. However, having students of color and maybe having the police come into their home or things like that, there is concerns. And so 2 weeks ago, we ended up calling the hospital and here in New York and explaining a little bit of what we were undergoing and discussing options. So in general, the hearing public has access to mobile units. Psychiatrists are able to do phone conferencing, what have you. However, with deaf individuals, let alone deaf students, it's a little bit more complicated. So we have the MOPD, the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. We contacted them, talk about where we were experiencing our own strife. We talked with the hospital, and they said that we would be able to call 911, and 911 would send a unit. It's not a completely comfortable situation. It's not ideal, but that was 2 weeks ago. We have had incidents come up, and we feel that we would need to call 911 and have an ambulance come and make a decision about what to do with the child. And I'm so curious about what other schools have done, if they have a plan or what that's looked like for you. And you can also type that in the chat window if you prefer, or you can start your video. I know it's a tough question. Oh, I'm seeing request to repeat the question. The question is, if you have students with mental health concerns specifically related to self-harm or suicidal comments, what is your procedure related to a hospitalization?
Hi, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're at Texas School for the Deaf. First of all, my name's Carrie. and I'm assistant director of student life. And so I'm heavily involved with our mental health needs here. Before the stay put, we met with counseling teams, social workers to make sure that we were all on the same page. And what we decided was we'd have mental health counselor working the evening shifts. So they had evening hours. Once we received information, we would have staff stay on Zoom if that was agreed upon. So they would contact that student and we would reach out to the mental health person to reach out to the family to let them know that the report was made, a comment was said, etc. And then from there, the mental health individual will support the family along that process. Hopefully that answers your question. It's not ideal. It's not. It's just simply not during this time.
We've seen the same thing here. Have you had a student go to a hospital yet?
So far, knock on wood, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Hi.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. Hi. So from Rochester School for the Deaf, and I've got two situations very similar. One, a younger woman, self-medicated and had to be hospitalized as a result, high-risk student. So we did provide that level of support through counselors, etc. And then another situation, oh, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
She herself was willing to go to the hospital?
She was, voluntarily so, yes.
Great.
And then just yesterday we had a situation where a counselor of mine was engaging with a student, providing that support, and there was arguments amongst the family members in the background. The student themselves kind of lost it. In the end, called the police. I was actively involved. I was on the phone with the police. Police came to the house to help out. The girl was brought in to be evaluated at the hospital, and it looks as though family members caught it, but often we're engaging ourselves, but we're being called in maybe by a teacher to provide that level of support and to kind of intervene there. But very similar to what you've outlined.
So in talking about if students make a comment during class time via Zoom, I know Zoom actually has a feature where you are able to move them into what they call the break room. And then the teacher is able to contact the counseling staff to invite the counselor into that break room to do some one-on-one. Our procedure has been that if we're dialoguing with the student one-on-one, and if the student makes a comment regarding self-harm, we always call in a second person to be a part of that. So again, if say we're meeting with a student one-on-one, then we call in that second person. So that way it's not a single person who's making the decision. Hey, Jessica.
Hi, Jessica from Tennessee. We do have one student that was hospitalized, and they were hospitalized for a week. Once they were discharged, the hospital recommended 0 services. So then the school ended up providing counseling and support to the family. It's very frustrating, just thinking about, you have more family services. I mean, it's a big city. You have that level of support, and now our school is just 100% engaged there. And it's like we have this raw, unfinished business that now, is exponentially worse, as you can imagine. It just got me pondering quite a bit.
Right. I know before distance learning, we would send students and they would always say, refer back to the school for care. With psychiatrists, they have, of course, a higher degree in terms of service provision and what have you. They're willing to take on a little more. So oftentimes we will make a recommendation to the family, but then they decline, whether it be due to comfort level or what have you. And so we've tried to work with our hospitals, recognizing that the system is not really effective. We are fortunate that we have a contract psychiatrist that works with us, and really they actually work for the mental health center. And so when making a referral, we're able to contact them and they're able to meet with our families. And they're able to currently do that through Zoom and still provide medication. But you're right. Our staff is always getting the brunt of the follow-up
Mhm.
because people don't know how to work with our population. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, okay, I see a question here. Do students have to sign a safety contract while doing distance learning? You know, a few years ago, there was actually research that showed that safety contracts were not evidence-based and not necessarily reliable. So my team, there is one person who does prefer to use those. I'm actually a big proponent for empowering our students in making decisions. If the counselor feels that it's needed and beneficial, that they can. But how do you do a signature with the students via distance learning? So the counselors may type something up, get the verbal yes, and then they send that to the students through Schoology, and then they're able to sign or agree there. So we do have one counselor that does that, but most of the time it's done as an agreement amongst, but not necessarily anything signed. And we always reach out to the family, explain what the agreement was, what it all entails, so the family is aware of what we're doing and they are familiar with how to support their child best. Oh, go ahead. From, I think, Indiana. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Hi. I'm kind of going to deviate a little bit here. So a student that's incredibly withdrawn, that doesn't engage, they're not participating in their Zoom classes, will not have conversations with their counselor. Even the moms tried to kind of coax them into talking to a counselor via Zoom, refuses to contact any friends or counselors, even through the video phone, clearly really depressed. Senior year, and was really excited, already accepted to Gallaudet, now doesn't know what's going to happen as a result of this pandemic. So the conversation was, do we want to just drive to this student's home, or is that an invasion of privacy, right? If we just drive over there, is that damaging to the relationship? What would your suggestion be for a student that's just incredibly withdrawn during this time that won't reach out to us?
I think that's a good question. I'm thinking about the family. Technically, what my department's been doing for many years is that we reach out to the families and say, hey, we need your help with something. Could you come to a meeting? And the families would come and we're able to, you know, coordinate that, give them a date. And then the other option we give is say, hey, we'll come visit you. 90% of the time, the families would much rather come to us than us go to them. So maybe that's something you should offer to the student. Give them an opportunity to meet with someone. And if you can, give that student the option to decide who it is they're meeting with.
We tried that.
In that case, you may want to go move forward with a home visit.
Yeah, I'm just more concerned about damaging the relationship. What if we go and then they're more resistant and that we can never make that connection again? That's my fear. So I want to tread lightly here.
You can try with a teacher, with a counselor. I know you are concerned about that child. And clearly the parents have expressed their concern as well. So maybe face-to-face would have a different outcome.
Right.
I mean, that's just another option you have.
Yeah. I think going in person might be our best option at this time, but I just wasn't sure if you had a different vantage point there in terms of the actual relationship that we have, that rapport.
All right. Any additional questions for Carlos? Hi.
Chris?
Oh,
Chris?
hi, I'm Chris Johnson from Ohio School for the Deaf. This has been really a good opportunity to participate. It seems like a lot of us are having similar experiences. So as the school year is finishing, we're approaching summer. I know some are talking about doing year-round, some are talking about doing a regular school year. What's the expectation for you? Will you be working during the summer? Are you planning to be off? I know there seems to be a lack of information with coronavirus. The stats are changing and students are missing out a lot on what's going on. So how are you hoping to provide support throughout the summer? That's what I'm interested in.
Great question. We actually just had a team meeting this morning and we talked about two things. One being the summer. What is that going to look like? And then what was the second? Oh, right. Okay. Over the weekend in New York, people are starting to go out and they are practicing social distancing for some are not, which is concerning. But back to the summer, unfortunately, New York State has not made a determination as to what's going to happen with summer school. So that's a big holdup in itself. And it's caused, truthfully, a lot of anxiety amongst our students and staff as well. Summer school program for us, we've always had one, and we've always had mental health staff available. Typically 2 are staffed for our summer school. So if we're open, we can guarantee that we'll have, again, 2 mental health staff available to our students, obviously. But now, just this morning, that conversation that we had, there was one teacher from high school and counselor met last week, and they talked about what are we going to do for summer programming for our students. And our ultimate goal is, if we don't, okay, let me backpedal a little bit. With our summer program, it typically runs from preschool, elementary, and middle school, FLTC, and special needs, as well as high school teams. But 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders, they don't have summer school. We don't have that provided. So we're looking at the age groups that I previously mentioned. Summer school, okay, we can continue with distant learning. However, what are we going to do for our high school age kids? They're typically gone to summer camps, youth leadership camps, employment opportunities, volunteer opportunities. Now there's none of that. So we're wanting high school teachers and counselors to come up with some lesson plans, maybe a goal of 20 items where we can share that with our school staff. Maybe we can add to that list of 20, and then we're going to share that with our high school students. I do recall 2 things from this morning. Okay, one was that a teacher was willing to do, what was it? Book talk. This was for, I think the lower level readers, but high interest. So the books might be tough. So the teachers will provide that in ASL, they'll provide the book, and then students will actually lead these book club meetings. So that was one idea. The other idea was a gardening project. One of my staff was willing to procure, what did they purchase? I don't have a green thumb, so I don't even know what the right verbiage is. It soil, fertilizer? I don't know what it is. Anyhow, they're buying something to get this garden idea started. And they're mailing it to our students, our high school students, those that are willing to engage. And they'll provide that, gardening tips 101 through Zoom. In New York City, as you can imagine, we don't have a lot of grass around here. But this gardening project is intended for, New Yorkers, where we can grow stuff in the metro area. And students will get that guidance from this high school staff member, and they'll begin a garden, hopefully. And once we open our doors again, they can bring in whatever they've grown at home. So we'll actually have a garden to come back to. So those are 2 ideas that are kind of fresh off the press as of this morning.
All right, any additional questions? I'm not seeing any pop up in chat.
No more questions?
Carlos, I'll let you decide whether or not we're ready to conclude.
Sorry, I'm just reading my own questions, and I believe we received answers to almost everything. I guess there is this one, and this one pertains to administration. How are they supporting the staff's well-being? But I think we can hold off on that one till our June meeting. So I think we can table that one for now. No, I think I'm good with my own questions. I think I got them all answered.
Great. If no additional questions, then I believe we can close. All right, then I will go ahead and conclude this meeting. Big thank you to Carlos for your wonderful sharing today, the resources and programming that you've mentioned. Thank you to other participants. And we hope to see you our next online meeting. Thank you so much, Carlos.
All right, and if any of you guys want to reach out to me, please feel free to reach out to me. You can find my email through the Lexington website, okay?
All right, great. Thank you so much.
All right, and thank you to the interpreters. Thank you so much.